Number. Humans always remember a favor, and the galaxy observes. Part 1. The stars were cold and quiet. On the day the Caithri saved 4,000 human lives, nobody in the galaxy expected it. Nobody asked for it, it simply happened. Because one species chose to be kind to another, the colony ship Starward Hope had been traveling for 8 months when everything went wrong. A power surge destroyed the main engine. The backup systems failed 3 hours later. Captain Danny Marsh stood on the bridge and watched the lights flicker as life support began to fail. Behind him, his crew worked in desperate silence, trying to fix what could not be fixed. 4,000 colonists slept in cryopods below. Families, children, scientists, farmers, all of them dreaming of a new world, unaware that they would never wake up. The ship drifted through the Vaughn expanse, a region of space so empty that rescue seemed impossible. Danny sent out a distress signal. He did not expect anyone to hear it. The nearest human outpost was 2 months away. By then the air would be gone. The cold would take them all, but someone did hear. Caithri were an old species. They had traveled the stars for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Their bodies were covered in hard shells. Their eyes saw in spectrums humans could not imagine, and their minds worked in patterns that other species found impossible to understand. They kept to themselves. They traded with no one. They helped no one. That was what everyone believed. The Caithri harvester vessel Quiet Tide appeared on the sensors 6 hours after Danny sent his message. He stared at the screen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The Caithri never came to this sector. They never responded to distress calls. They never involved themselves with younger species, yet here they were. The Caithri commander was called Matron VTHKA. Her voice came through the communication system like the sound of wind through dry leaves. She spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word required great thought. Human vessel, we have received your signal. Your ship is damaged. Your people will die. Danny gripped the edge of his console. Yes, we need help. Can you help us? There was a long pause. Danny imagined the Caithri discussing among themselves, calculating the cost and benefit of intervention. He imagined them deciding that humans were not worth the trouble. We will help, Matron VTHKA said. The Quiet Tide extended towing cables and pulled the Starward Hope to safety. Keith engineers came aboard and repaired the life support systems. They shared fuel and food and medical supplies. They worked for 3 days without rest, without complaint, without asking for anything in return. When the repairs were complete, Danny approached Matron VTHKA. On the observation deck, the Caithri commander stood before the viewport, her compound eyes reflecting the distant stars. Her shell was dark green, marked with patterns that Danny later learned indicated great age and wisdom. I want to thank you, Danny said. I want to pay you back. Tell me what you need. Tell me what I can give you. Matron VTHKA turned to face him. Her mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or confusion. Danny could not tell. We do not trade in debts, she said. We saw suffering. We ended it. That is all. Consider it forgotten. But humans never forget. 30 years passed. The colonists of the Starward Hope reached their destination and built a thriving settlement. They had children. Those children had children. The 4,000 became 11 million, spread across 3 worlds, building lives that would never have existed without the kindness of strangers on Earth. The story of the quiet tide became legend. Every child learned about the K3 who appeared from nowhere and saved a dying ship. Every history book mentioned Matron Vthka and her simple words. Consider it forgotten. Humanity did not forget. Admiral Lisa Grant was 62 years old when the message arrived. She sat in her office at Earth Command reviewing fleet movements when her assistant burst through the door with news that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral, we have a situation. The K3 home world is in danger. Lisa looked up from her work. What kind of danger? Extinction level. An asteroid cluster has been destabilized by a supernova. It's heading directly for Vashon Prime. The Galactic Council has already declared the situation hopeless. They're saying maybe 2% of the population can be evacuated. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, then she turned to her console and pulled up an old file, a 30-year-old incident report about a colony ship called the Starward Hope and a K3 vessel called the Quiet Tide. Get me the Secretary General, she said, and start contacting every ship captain in the fleet, every single one. Admiral, what are we doing? Lisa stood up and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a species that had shown humanity kindness was facing death. They had asked for nothing. They had expected nothing. They had simply helped because it was right. We're paying back a debt, Lisa said. Within 6 hours, the first ships departed Earth. Within 12 hours, vessels from every human colony had changed course toward K3 space. Mining ships, military cruisers, cargo haulers, hospital vessels, research stations, even private craft owned by citizens who simply wanted to help. The Galactic Council watched in confusion. Ambassador Zethal of the Morvathi Collective sent an official message advising humanity against intervention. The mathematics were clear, he explained. The asteroid cluster could not be stopped. Any resources spent on this effort would be wasted. The K3 had accepted their fate with dignity. Humanity should do the same. Lisa read the message and set it aside. Then she recorded her response and broadcast it on every frequency in the sector. We don't do math when it comes to paying back kindness. 30 years ago, the K3 saved 4,000 of our people when they had no reason to. They asked for nothing. Today, 11 million humans are alive because of that one act of mercy. Children, grandchildren, entire family lines that exist because strangers chose to help strangers. We remember. We always remember. And now we're coming to help, not because we have to, not because anyone asked, because it's right. Across the galaxy, other species heard the message. They watched the human fleet grow larger. With every passing hour, they ran calculations and determined that humanity's plan was foolish, impossible, doomed to fail. But the humans kept coming, and the galaxy began to wonder if perhaps they had misunderstood something fundamental about this young species. From the third planet of an unremarkable star, number humans always remember a favor, and the galaxy observes. Part 2. The first human ships arrived at Vashon Prime on a morning when the sky was clear and the twin suns cast long shadows across the ancient cities. The K3 had been preparing for death. They had been saying goodbye to their homes, their history, their children. They had accepted that the universe was cruel and that their time had come to an end. Then the humans appeared. Commander Ben Harper stood on the bridge of the Northern Light and looked down at the planet below. Vashon Prime was beautiful, covered in forests of purple trees and oceans of deep green water. Cities rose from the landscape like sculptures made of shell and stone, each one built over thousands of years by generations of K'thri who never imagined this day would come. Open a channel, Ben said. Broadcast to the planet and to every ship in the sector. His communications officer nodded. Channel open, Commander. Ben took a deep breath. He thought about his grandmother, who had been one of the 4,000 colonists on the Starward Hope. He thought about the stories she told him when he was young, stories about the dark days when death seemed certain, and then the bright moment when salvation appeared from the void. People of Vashon Prime, he said, this is Commander Ben Harper of the United Earth vessel Northern Light. 30 years ago, people saved 4,000 of ours when you had no reason to. You asked for nothing. You expected nothing. Today, there are 11 million humans alive because of those 4,000 colonists. Children, grandchildren, entire family lines that exist because the K'thri showed mercy to strangers. He paused, letting his words sink in across 100 worlds. We remember, we always remember, and we are here to help. K'thri government did not know how to respond. High Matron Shelva, the leader of their people, sent a confused message, asking why humanity would risk so much for a species that had done them one small favor 3 decades ago. Ben's response was simple. It was not a small favor. You saved our people. Now we will save yours. More ships arrived by the hour. The Galactic Council continued to send warnings. Ambassador Zethal of the Morvathi Collective appeared on every news channel explaining with cold precision that humanity's effort was mathematically doomed. The asteroid cluster was too large, moving too fast, and too close. No force in the galaxy could stop it. The Morvathi were the most intelligent species known to exist. Their calculations were never wrong. They had predicted the rise and fall of empires, the outcomes of wars, the lifespans of stars. When they said something was impossible, everyone believed them, but the humans did not listen. Admiral Lisa Grant arrived with the main fleet 3 days after the first ships. She set up a command center in orbit around Vashon Prime and began coordinating the largest rescue operation in human history. Engineers calculated trajectories. Miners prepared their drilling equipment. Military vessels loaded nuclear charges into their launch bays. What's the current count? Lisa asked her aide. 412 vessels. Admiral, more arriving every hour. And the asteroid cluster, 17 days until impact. The largest objects are approximately 30 km in diameter. There are thousands of smaller fragments. Lisa studied the holographic display showing the approaching death. It looked like a swarm of angry bees, each one capable of destroying a city. All of them heading straight for the planet below. We'll need to prioritize, she said. Target the largest asteroids first. If we can break them apart or nudge them off course, the smaller ones will be survivable. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan worked 20 hours a day designing the operation. She was young, only 34, but she had more experience with asteroid mining than anyone in the fleet. She had spent her career learning how to break apart rocks in space. Now She would use that knowledge to save a world. The key is the approach angle. Kate explained to her team, we drill into the asteroid, plant the charges, and detonate in sequence. If we do it right, we can change the trajectory by fraction of a degree. That doesn't sound like much, but over 17 days, a fraction of a degree means the difference between impact and a near miss. And if we do it wrong, someone asked, then we create more fragments and make things worse, so we won't do it wrong. The K3 watched all of this in amazement. They had never seen anything like it. Their species was old and wise, but they were also patient and accepting. When the universe presented them with an impossible situation, they had chosen to face death with dignity rather than fight against fate. The humans had made a different choice. Other species began arriving not to help but to watch. Crystalline Hegemony sent 3 observer vessels, their hulls shimmering with internal light. The Pale Wanderers, a nomadic species that traveled between galaxies, paused their eternal journey to witness what was happening. The Vaughn, who had not spoken to anyone in 10,000 years, sent a single drone that hovered silently at the edge of the system. Ambassador Zethal updated the Morvathi probability estimate, 12%. Chance of success, 12% is not zero, Lisa said when she heard the number. 12% means 88% chance of failure. Her aide pointed out, then we'll be in the 12%. The work began. Mining ships approached the first asteroid, a jagged rock 23 km across, spinning slowly as it hurtled toward Vashon Prime. Drills bit into the surface, tunnels were carved into the stone, nuclear charges were placed at precise locations calculated by Kate Sullivan and her team. The first detonation lit up the void like a new star. The asteroid shuddered, cracked, and began to drift slightly off course. Sensors confirmed a trajectory change of 0.003 degrees. It was not enough, but it was a start. The Morvathi updated their estimate 14%. On Vashon Prime, the K3 began to hope. High Matron Shava broadcast message to her people, telling them that the humans had come to help and that perhaps the end was not certain. After all, in the Orbital Command Center, Admiral Lisa Grant watched the progress report scroll across her screen. 400 ships, 17 days, thousands of asteroids. We can do this, she said quietly. We have to do this. Nobody disagreed. Nobody suggested retreat. The humans had made a promise, and humans always kept their promises. The galaxy watched, waiting to see what would happen next. Humans always remember a favor, and the galaxy observes. Part 3. 5 days into the operation, disaster struck. The asteroid was called Fragment 7. It was smaller than most of the others, only 8 km across, but it was dense and unstable. When the mining team planted their charges, they did not know that the rock was hollow in places, filled with pockets of frozen gas that had been trapped for millions of years. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan was reviewing data in the command center when the alarms began to scream. She looked up at the main display and saw Fragment 7 breaking apart in ways that should not have been possible. The nuclear charges had caused a chain reaction. The frozen gas was expanding. The asteroid was not just fragmenting, it was exploding. All ships, emergency retreat. Kate shouted into her communicator, get away from Fragment 7 now. But it was too Late, the explosion sent thousands of deadly shards flying in every direction. 3 of those shards hit the mining vessel's steady hand, tearing through its hull like knives through paper. 2 more struck the cargo ship Morning Star. 7 smaller fragments slammed into the military cruiser Defiant Dream. Kate watched the sensor readings in horror. Life signs dropping, hull breaches expanding, distress calls flooding every channel. 12 ships were destroyed in less than 3 minutes. 843 people died in the cold silence of space. Their names would be remembered forever, but in that moment all Kate could do was stare at the screen and feel the weight of the loss crushing her chest. No, she whispered. No, no. No, Admiral Lisa Grant's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. All ships report status. Medical vessels move to rescue positions. Engineering teams, I want a full assessment of the damage within the hour. The operation did not stop. The humans did not retreat. They mourned their dead and continued working. Captain Sam Rodriguez of the cargo vessel Bright Tomorrow was one of the survivors. His ship had been caught at the edge of the explosion and the damage was severe. The hull was cracked. Atmosphere was leaking into space. 3 of his crew members were dead and 2 more were badly injured. The Morvathy Observer ship broadcast a message on an open channel. Human vessel Bright Tomorrow. Our calculations indicate that continued operation with your current damage level will result in complete structural failure within 6 hours. We recommend immediate withdrawal. Sam looked at the message, then looked at his crew. They were scared. They were hurt. They had just lost friends. What do you want to do? His first officer asked. Sam thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about the Kether on the planet below, waiting to see if they would live or die. He thought about the 4,000 colonists who had been saved 30 years ago and how one of those colonists had been his great-aunt. Patch the hull. He said, we're not leaving, Captain. The Morvathy said, I heard what they said. They're probably right, but we didn't come here because it was safe. We came here because people who helped us need help now. That doesn't change just because things got hard. He opened a channel to the entire sector, every species watching, every ship in the fleet, every being with a receiver heard his words. This is Captain Sam Rodriguez of the Bright Tomorrow. We knew the cost. When we came here, those who died knew it too. We all understood that this might be the end, but Kethri lives are not worth less than human lives. Their children deserve to grow up just as much as ours do. We stay. We finish what we started, and if we die trying, then at least we die knowing we did everything we could. The channel filled with voices, hundreds of human ships all responding at once. We stay, we stay, we stay on. The observer vessels, the other species, watched in stunned silence. Crystalline hegemony had never seen anything like this. Their species valued logic above all else. They could not understand why anyone would continue in operation after such losses. The pale wanderers who had traveled the universe for longer than most species had existed began recording everything. They sensed that something important was happening, something that would matter for ages to come. The Vorn drone moved closer, its ancient sensors drinking in every detail. Ambassador Zethal of the Morvathy Collective updated the probability estimate. The numbers had dropped after the disaster. now only 11% chance of success. He broadcast this information, fully expecting the humans to finally accept reality. Instead, more ships arrived, civilian vessels that had been waiting at the edge of the system now moved forward to fill the gaps left by the destroyed ships. Families who had come to watch their loved ones work now volunteered to help with supply runs. A retired mining captain named George Palmer, 73 years old, took command of a repair crew and refused to rest until every damaged ship was patched. "I remember the Starward Hope," George told a young engineer who asked why he was there. "My parents were on that ship. I wouldn't exist if the K3 hadn't helped. Now it's my turn." Kate Sullivan worked for 42 hours straight redesigning the operation to account for the new dangers. She developed new protocols for identifying unstable asteroids. She calculated safer approach angles. She found ways to use smaller charges that would reduce the risk of chain reactions. "I won't let anyone else die because of my mistakes," she told Admiral Grant during a brief moment of rest. "It wasn't your mistake," Lisa said gently. "The asteroid was unstable. Nobody could have known. Maybe, but I'm the chief engineer. Every life lost is my responsibility, and I'm going to make sure we save as many as possible." End quote. The work continued day after day. The human fleet chipped away at the asteroid cluster. Some rocks were diverted, others were broken into smaller pieces, a few were pushed just enough that they would miss the planet entirely. The Morvathi updated their estimate, 17%, then 23%, then 31%, on Vashon Prime. The K3 watched the sky and waited. They had stopped preparing for death. Now they were beginning to hope for life. "Hi." Matron Shava sent a message to Admiral Grant. "We do not understand why you are doing this. We do not understand why you would sacrifice so much for us." Lisa read the message and smiled sadly. "That's the thing about humans," she said. "To no one in particular, we never forget. Either that's why we're here. Number humans always remember a favor, and the Galaxy Observes Part 4. On the 12th day the tide began to turn. Kate Sullivan stood in the command center, her eyes red from lack of sleep, her hands shaking from too much coffee. But when she looked at the holographic display, she felt something she had not felt since the operation began: hope. "The main cluster has shifted," she announced to the room. "Trajectory analysis confirms that the largest asteroids will miss Vashon Prime by a margin of approximately 40,000 km." Admiral Lisa Grant closed her eyes for a moment. "You're sure?" "Yes, Admiral. The extinction level threat has been eliminated. There are still smaller fragments that will impact the planet, but the damage will be survivable. Cities will be hit, people will die, but the species will continue. The civilization will survive." A cheer went up from the crew. People hugged each other. Some cried. After 12 days of fear and loss and endless work, they had done something that the entire galaxy had said was impossible. The Morvathi Collective updated their probability estimate for the first time in their history with an admission of error. Previous calculations did not adequately account for human determination. Current success probability 73%. "We acknowledge that our initial assessment was incorrect." The message spread across 100 worlds. The Morvathi, the most intelligent species in the known galaxy, had admitted they were wrong. It was unprecedented. It was humbling, and it made every other species stop and reconsider what they thought they knew about humanity. But the work was not finished. Smaller fragments still hurtled toward Vashon Prime. Kate and her team worked to identify the ones that would cause the most damage, and the fleet focused their remaining resources on those targets. They could not stop everything. They could not save everyone, but they could reduce the destruction as much as possible. On day 15, the final large asteroid was successfully diverted. Commander Ben Harper guided his ship alongside the massive rock as it drifted harmlessly past Vashon Prime, its new trajectory carrying it into empty space, where it would never threaten anyone. "That's the last one," he said into his communicator. "The big ones are done." "Good work, Commander," Admiral Grant replied. "Now we prepare for what comes next." Human medical ships began landing on Vashon Prime. Doctors and nurses who had been waiting in orbit now deployed to cities across the planet, setting up emergency hospitals and triage centers. The K3 had their own medical systems, but they had been preparing for extinction, not survival. They needed help, and the humans were ready to provide it. The smaller fragments hit over the course of 2 days. The first impact struck a coastal region, sending a wave of water and debris across several fishing communities. Human rescue teams were on the ground within hours, pulling survivors from the wreckage and treating the injured. The second impact hit the outskirts of an ancient city called Vithal, named after one of the K3's greatest historical leaders. Buildings that had stood for 3,000 years crumbled to dust, but the people had been evacuated in time thanks to warning systems set up by human engineers. More impacts followed. Each one brought destruction and death, but nothing like what would have happened without human intervention. The K3 counted their losses and mourned their dead, but they also celebrated their survival. When the dust finally settled, Hymatron Shava stood before the cameras and broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Her compound eyes reflected the sky, where human ships still orbited, still watching, still ready to help. 30 years ago, my predecessor matron VTHKA helped a human ship in distress, Shelva said. She did it because it was right, not because she expected anything in return. She told the humans to forget. She told them we did not trade in debts. She was wrong. Shelva paused, gathering her thoughts. Today, my people are alive because of that one act of kindness. The humans did not forget. They could not forget. When we faced destruction, they came to save us. Without being asked, they sacrificed their ships, their resources, their lives for us, for strangers, for a species that had shown them mercy once 3 decades ago. Her voice grew stronger. The K3 owe humanity a debt we can never repay, and now we understand something that we should have understood long ago. We are not meant to repay it to them. We are meant to pay it forward to others until the entire galaxy learns what humanity has taught us today. She looked directly into the camera, her ancient eyes burning with new understanding. Small kindnesses matter. Mercy matters. Helping strangers without expecting reward matters. These things ripple outward through time and space, growing larger with each passing year. Today the K3 were saved not by weapons or wealth, but by single act of compassion that happened before many of the human rescuers were even born. Let every species in this Galaxy, remember what we witnessed. Let every being who saw this moment carry the lesson forward on the observer. Vessels, the other species listened in silence. The crystalline hegemony began, transmitting Shava's message to their distant home worlds. The pale wanderers added the recording to their eternal archives. The Vaughn drone captured every word, storing it in memory banks that would preserve it for millions of years. Admiral Lisa Grant watched the broadcast from her command center. She was exhausted. She had not slept properly in weeks. She had lost 2,847 people under her command, and their faces would haunt her for the rest of her life. But she had also saved a world. She had paid back a debt that her species had carried for 30 years. And she had shown the galaxy that humans were something more than just another young species struggling to find their place among the stars. We did it, her aide said quietly. Lisa nodded. We did. But this is just the beginning. What we showed them today, that's going to change things. The whole galaxy saw what happened here. They're going to remember. She looked out the viewport at Vashan Prime, where rescue operations were still underway, where human and K3 worked side by side to save lives and rebuild homes. And maybe, she said, they'll learn something. Number humans always remember a favor, and the galaxy observes. Part 5. 1 year after the Vashan event, the galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. Ambassador Matt Collins sat in a meeting room on the crystalline hegemony's home world, surrounded by beings made of living crystal who glowed with soft internal light. They had never invited humans to their planet before. They had never wanted to speak with the younger races at all, but now they were asking to establish formal diplomatic relations. We have debated for many of your months, the crystal speaker said, its voice like the sound of wind chimes. We watched what your species did at Vashan Prime. We analyzed every aspect of your behavior. We could not understand it. Matt nodded slowly. What couldn't you understand? The illogic, the waste. You spent resources that you needed. You lost ships that you valued. You sacrificed lives that could not be replaced, all for a species that was not your ally, not your trading partner, not your friend. By every calculation we could perform, your actions made no sense. And what conclusion did you reach? The crystal speaker was silent for a long moment. The light inside its body pulsed with colors that Matt could not name. We concluded that we have been living incorrectly. We have spent thousands of years valuing efficiency above all else. We have avoided other species because interaction was costly and unprofitable. We have hoarded our resources because sharing brought no measurable benefit. The crystal speaker's glow intensified. But you showed us something different. You showed us that kindness is not a transaction. It is a seed. It grows, it spreads, and eventually it comes back to you in ways that cannot be calculated. Matt smiled. Some things can't be measured with numbers. Yes, we understand that now. We wish to learn more. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The Morvathi Collective, the most logical species in existence, had added a new variable to all their probability calculations. They called it the human irrationality factor, and despite the name, it was not meant as an insult. The Morvathi had realized that human behavior could not be predicted using standard models because humans did not always act in their own best interest. Sometimes they acted in the interest of others, sometimes they took risks that made no logical sense, and sometimes those risks changed everything. 3. Species who had refused all contact with the younger races for centuries had now opened communication channels. The Vaughn, silent for 10,000 years, sent a message to Earth that took human linguists a month to fully translate. When they finally understood it, they read it to the world. We have traveled the stars since before your sun was born, the message said. We have seen countless species rise and fall. Most of them fought and conquered and destroyed. They thought strength meant power over others, but you strange, short-lived emotional creatures, you understand something they never learned. True strength is not the ability to harm, it is the willingness to help. We were waiting to see if the young ones would discover this truth. You have, we are pleased. On Earth, monuments were raised to the 2,847 humans who had died during the Vashan operation. Their names were carved into stone and metal and crystal, one by one, so that no one would ever be forgotten. A new holiday was created. Remembrance Day, observed every year on the anniversary of the first human ships arriving at Vashan Prime. The holiday spread beyond Earth. Within a year, 17 different worlds were observing it. Human colonies, Kethri settlements, even a few crystalline hegemony outposts joined in the commemoration. The numbers grew every year. On Vashan Prime, humans were treated with a reverence that made many of them uncomfortable. Kethri children were taught the story of the starward hope in the quiet tide as their first lesson in school. Then they were taught about the Vashan event and what the humans had done. The moral was always the same: small kindnesses ripple outward forever. A memorial garden was planted in honor of the human dead. Kethri selected plants that would bloom for 1,000 years, tended by automated systems that would function long after everyone who witnessed the event had passed away. The garden covered an entire hillside, and at its center stood a simple stone marker with words carved in both human standard and Kethri script. They remembered Admiral Lisa Grant, now retired, visited Vashan Prime 1 year after the operation. She walked through the memorial garden with a Kethri guide, looking at the strain purple flowers in the winding paths that connected them. We wanted something that would last, the guide explained. Something that our descendants would see for generations to come. Something that would remind them of what happened here and what it means. Lisa touched one of the flowers gently. Its petals were soft and warm, pulsing slightly with the rhythm of the planet's twin suns. 1,000 years, she said quietly. That's a long time. Not long enough, the guide replied. Not for what you did, but it is what we can offer. Lisa smiled. That's exactly how long humans remember a favor. The guide made a sound that might have been laughter. We have learned this about your species. You do not forget. You cannot forget. It is written into your very nature. It is. Lisa agreed. And that's why we came 30 years ago. Your people saved mine. The Kethri who helped us probably thought we would move on and forget, but that's not how we work. Every kindness stays with us. Every act of mercy becomes part of who we are, and when we have the chance to pay it back, we take it no matter the cost. Across the galaxy, other species were beginning to act differently. Ships that might have passed stranded vessels now stopped to offer assistance. resources that might have been hoarded were being shared with those in need. The strong were protecting the weak, not because they expected payment, but because they had seen what such protection could mean. The galaxy had learned a simple truth from watching humanity at Vashon Prime. Kindness was not weakness, mercy was not foolishness. Helping others without expecting reward was not a waste. It was an investment in a future that might be brighter than anyone could predict. High Matron Shava's words echoed across 100 worlds. We are meant to pay it forward. And slowly, one act at a time, the galaxy began to change. The humans had shown them the way. Now it was up to everyone else to follow, because humans always remember a favor, and one day they always pay it back.